Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Bakukal Holmeswealth V. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of Downfall by Jean Rabe. I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga YouTube members and Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. You can even pick up $10 by signing up to startplaying.games or get Dragonlance Media using my affiliate links in the description below. Now, this is my perspective only. If yours differs, as always, that's okay. We can disagree. That's life. But I would love to hear your thoughts. So if you're joining live, put your thoughts in YouTube live chat. If you're joining after the fact and you're watching this review, put your thoughts in the comments. Love to hear what you have to say. Okay, so the way these things are produced here is I've got a pre-written review that I usually break up the books into 3 different sections, usually by 100 or so pages. Just depends on where the chapter breaks down. And so I break it up into 3 different sections. And after I read one section, I process it, I write down my thoughts. Usually that includes a synopsis. And then the next day I go back to the second and then the third, so on and so forth until I'm done. So I'm going to read you my pre-written review. Some of that has my thoughts. Afterward, I'm going to just riff. I'm going to riff a little bit on the story, the characters, the era, and anything else that sort of pops in my head. If you have thoughts of your own and you put them in the chat, then I'll riff on those as well, and we'll just have a little bit of fun here. It's Friday. It's Dragonlance. What's not to love? Okay, so let's dive into it. All right, the story begins with Dhamon in a hospital in Ironspike, run by the Legion of Steel. He's actually there to rob the place, but obviously no one knows about it. His old companions, Rig and Fiona, found him. Oh, and so as far as timeline goes, this is after the dawning of a New Age trilogy. So Malastrix and Skelendros and Honest Sablet and Berylinthranox, they're all, over their own domains. And so you would place this in the Dragonlance Saga system 5th Age era. This is well before the War of Souls, but well after the Chaos War. So the Dragon Overlords are in power, but it's after Dragons of a New Age trilogy. So he and his old companions, Rig and Fiona, found him there and were stunned to have him seen him in there, but went about their own way. They plan on when he wakes up to talk to him and stuff. So Rig is if you remember, he's an Ergothian mariner or pirate, and Fiona is a Knight of Salamnia. So when night fell, Dhamon actually snuck out and snuck around the hospital, stealing loot from people, and then escaped. He was seen by a patient escaping out of a window, and the guards were called on him. Pardon. Dhamon is accompanied by the other thieves, Ricali, his half-elf lover, Fetch, a goblin thief magic user, and a brute of a man named Maldred. They fight their way out of town, burning down a stable and stealing horses to avoid the Legion. Rig and Fiona inadvertently helped them flee, but then set to tracking them. Primarily because they stole their horses, I think, but also because this is not the behavior that they knew Dhamon would have engaged in, at least not the Dhamon they knew of, So Dhamon and his team set to want to try to buy a sword, but they needed a whole lot of money for it, which is what this whole thievery thing was for. This is yet to be explained, so they leave Kerr into the Calcus Mountains to the Vale of Chaos in the Valley of Crystals. Now, the Valley of Crystals was actually also brought up in the Odyssey of Gilthanas as a location. And I'm not sure which book happened first, but I'm really glad that 2 of them are talking about the same place so that you really can get a contextual understanding of where this was. So it's in the Calcus Mountains, and it's not too far from Sanction. So it's in that northwest of Kerr, south of Blood, but east of Sanction area, somewhere around there. So anyway, they're, let's see, where did I leave off? They plan to take a bunch of the gems to buy the sword with, but the valley is guarded by ogres and dwarves. So they're hunted and run off by dwarves, which they ended up wounding him severely. And even with that, they stole enough. They're not sure whether it's enough to actually afford to buy the sword. What sword it is, why they need this sword, no idea, never mentioned, total blank. So, and here's the other part of this. The other companions of Damon's don't know what the sword is or why he wants it at all. And in fact, after having finished the novel, I'm not 100% sure he knew why he wanted the sword. There's a narrative reason for it, because it's the MacGuffin, and there's actually a reason I'm sure pays off in the second and third book of this trilogy. But it was like literally one conversation he had with one person that was never mentioned anywhere else, and it only happens at the very end, final act of the book, that we get that one little conversation that then leads us to understand why Dhamon wants it. But even then, it's like a Hail Mary. So we'll get there. So this is all confusing for the reader, as there's no indication of what type of sword or why Dhamon wants it, but his companions are willing to go along anyway. So it does speak to the devotion of his companions to him for some unknown reason. So then Rig and Fiona catch up with them and try to find out why Dhamon is so different from who they remember. He tells them a story about after the dawning of a New Age trilogy, he has a company who was hunting dragons in Quillinesty. They were ambushed and nearly all of the company was killed. Dhamon ran off and eventually found a tavern. He tried to drink the memory away from when one of the company found him and tried to take him into custody. Because according to everyone that survived, Dhamon took them to battle a dragon and then ran away when the dragon started murdering the company. So it was a very strange situation for them. A massive fight took place in the inn, killing many elves, and Dhamon ran off, eventually meeting up with his current companions. He has no interest in fighting dragons or being a hero, content to be a thief. His companions are shocked, but even more shocking is they want to join him. That's right, Rig and Fiona want to join this totally different Dhamon, who is a complete degenerate thief for some reason. Now, that was the end of the first third, and wow, it was a very odd third. It is clearly setting up a redemption arc for Dhamon, I think, now that I've actually finished the novel. Not yet, but I'm not sure I want a redemption arc. He was a great hero in the previous trilogy, but it is far more fascinating to see a hero change and devolve. Where does he go from here, and why does he need so much money for a sword? I'm interested in learning. Now, that was past Adam. Future Adam is looking at this very, very differently, but I still have some questions. Why did he change into the Dhamon that he is in the story? Because that one event is the only inciting incident we have which tells us why he changed. And that is not enough of an inciting incident to completely change a character. It can influence them, it can send them down a pathway, but the Dhamon we have in this novel is it's as if Jean Rabe, who wrote the Dragons of New Age trilogy and created this character, said, I don't like that character. I'm going to completely create a different character, and I just like the name, and so I'm going to give this completely new character that name. That's what it feels like. It feels like either it's a completely different author who just happened to like the name, or the same author who just happened to like the name, because the character is so different for no justifiable reason as presented. Maybe there'll be more in the next novels, but so far it's just not enough. So it's a bit difficult to read, as I'm not sure the structure of the story is resonating with me, but I'm still here for it. Well, with the second third over now, I can report that the sword is an interesting MacGuffin. It is Tanis Half-Elven's sword, Wormsbane. Now, I believe they're referring to the one he was given in Kithcannon's tomb, but they mentioned something about it being a treasure-finding sword, so I'm a bit confused by that line. So, Fiona wants to join them so that they will help her raise money to pay ransom for her brother, who is currently being held captive by Anna Sablet, the Black Dragon Overlord. What is interesting is that Rig, her fiancé, doesn't want to join, but he does so reluctantly. The Bandits don't want them to join in general, but Maldred has the hots for Fiona and plans to steal her away from Rig, so they join up. They all travel to Blood and plan to meet with the chieftain there to get the sword, because the chieftain has Tanis Half-Elven's sword, but first they have to heal up. They meet an ogre healer who is expensive but does the job beautifully. When they meet the chieftain, he tells them that he will sell the sword and help with the ransom if they go take care of some of the wolves that are killing a town's goats in his territory in the Calcas Mountains. Now everyone agrees and heads out together, only to discover it's not wolves, but rather giants that are killing these goats. So they head into the mountains searching for the giants, and they end up finding a cave. Inside the cave, they find rock trolls, not giants, and eventually destroy them, finding evidence that they are, in fact, the goat killers. However, they also find tunnels heading deeper into the earth and figure that they should make sure that there are no more trolls before returning for the treasure. They split up, leaving Fetch behind to watch the cave. Rig, Ricali, and Dhamon go down one tunnel. Maldred and Fiona go down another. They each travel hours into the earth. And this is clearly some version of a Calthax, an ancient dwarven home. Calthax is the dwarven name for Cold Forge. If you remember your dwarven ancient history, dwarves, according to the Dwarven Kingdoms of Krynn box set, dwarves originated in Taladas with reorcs. He changed them into dwarves from scions and then gnomes. And the dwarves came down to Ansalon, populated various Calthax all around Ansalon, and then eventually abandoned those, and they've always been just trying to find those Calthaxes again. But in any case, this is one of them. They find evidence of effigies of reorcs and dwarves in the relief, which is why they believe it is a dwarven settlement of Calthax, but there are also architectural anomalies that they find that aren't dwarven in nature, where the steps are much larger, which then leads me to believe that this Calthax was actually populated by dwarves after the Irda ogres left it. So we do have a lot of evidence, and this is one of the reasons why I love DragonLance so much. We have a lot of evidence of Irda ogres leaving settlements under the earth of these grand constructions that dwarves would later stumble across and co-opt. And so you have generation after generation of different races leaving their footprint. We also have the same thing with Hultrafolk and Bakali, leaving their footprint all across Taladas and Krynn and Ansalon, and other races coming in later, claiming the territory for their own, changing it to fit their needs, and claiming ownership. Very much like our own human history. And I think that's why I like it so much, is because it resonates with the human experience. That's what we have always done, and that's why you see locations all through the Middle East that have old, and you see this in South America as well, you have a very sort of buried and bottom surface level of one type of construction, and then you have ruins above it, which are very different type of construction, and it's so varied and different that it's clear the same culture didn't do it, and certainly didn't have the technology to do it. It's one of the reasons why that show Ancient Aliens actually exists, because people like to come up with fantastical reasons why there's architecture that they can't explain from a people that couldn't do that architecture. It's just from an earlier civilization that could do it, in my opinion. All right, so board up top, Fetch burns one of the 4 pillars with his magic and just starts dancing around it. He ends up burning all of them in a frenzy of dancing. This weakens the support of the cavern roof, not realizing these were load-bearing wooden poles, and the cavern roof starts to collapse, so he runs down Dhamon's tunnel because he knows if he ran down Maldred's tunnel, Maldred would be all pissed. So the backstory between Fetch and Maldred is that Maldred taught Fetch how to use some magic. They're both thieves. They're both versions of magic-using thieves. Maldred is infinitely better at it, though. There's a good reason later on for that. So the cavern collapses, and this forces everyone to continue down into the Calthax rather than trying to find, going back to the surface, because they just can't. Simultaneously, there's a constant supernatural rain that's flooding the rivers in the mountain. This rain breaks through the cavern walls, threatening to drown everyone. They follow the river down, and Fiona and Maldred find their way out, but the others find an ancient black magic scrying pond. They decide to have Fetch use it to see where they are, where Fiona is, where Oven, was it Oven, her brother? Let me just double check the name. Yeah, Oven, Fiona's brother. And Fiona's brother is being held by Sable, who is responsible for the rain, or at least there's a girl they believe to be connected with Sable who is responsible for the rain. Doing so drains the life from Fetch, however, who ends up dying, and Dhamon and Ricali leave him and Rig in the river before Rig witnesses Fetch's death and leaves himself. And this is brutal because it's an entirely different version of Dhamon. And I'm not buying the justification for his change. He faced dragon overlords, but one dragon killing a handful of elves twisted him into an unrecognizable person. It just doesn't make sense. Also, at this point, with a final third of the story left, we need to figure out who this young girl is that's making it rain uncontrollably, find out how to get the sword and treasure from the chieftain who led them to their deaths intentionally, and see the outcome of Rig and Maldred's fight over Fiona. I just don't think there's going to be a resolution to any of these story beats. And there actually are to some. So the final third of the novel feels very off. Every character mistrusts each other and refuses to acknowledge it, even to go so far as to abandon characters with huge implications. Maldred and Fiona make it back to Blood. Dhamon and Ricali get out of the cave and on shore, but Ricali slips and falls, nearly drowning, hitting her head, knocking herself out and breaking her arm. Rig exits the cave and tends to her, and Dhamon checks to see if she's breathing and then abandons them both. Now, this is his girlfriend. Now, he says under his breath that he clearly doesn't believe that he's her boyfriend, but throughout the entire story, it's inferred. She's calling him lover, they're having intimate moments, and she says, "I'm pregnant, don't tell Dhamon," inferring that it's Damon's kid inside of her belly. So Rig exits, not caring about her, even saying she would understand why he abandoned her. This is the version Dhamon that Rig acknowledges from here on out: callous, selfish, and uncaring. Ricali even mentions that she's pregnant, inferring it is with Dhamon, but she swears Rig to secrecy, and he actually keeps it, which blows my mind because Rig the whole time is complaining that this is not the Dhamon that he knows. And he could justifyingly just say, well, dude, your kid is in her belly. You need to pay attention to her, especially since it's not the Dhamon he knows. What does he have that's keeping him from telling him? And he still doesn't do it the whole story. But it gets worse. Dhamon meets the chieftain, takes all sorts of gems and jewelry for Ricali, as if he cared for her after having just abandoned her. But he just abandoned her one scene past. Then he demands Tanis Half-Elven's sword after being told that the chieftain was using them and Fiona, and will continue to use them to free ogres from a mind controlled by Sable. Dhamon doesn't care at all that Fiona's being used by his partner in crime. He doesn't care that they were all thrown into this death trap, never expecting to be made out alive. He seemingly just doesn't care about anything except for getting the sword. These are friends of his that he fought beside with for months, and he is just dismissing them being used after having been used and deceived. He even knows that Maldred is using a charm spell to split up Fiona and Rig and to use her, but he doesn't care. And I just don't understand what we have been presented as how Dhamon becomes this character. It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, he is given a fake sword and he whips the shit out of this massive ogre chieftain with Maldred standing by and watching. And this is more of an issue when you discover at the end of the story that Maldred is the chieftain's son and an ogre magi in disguise, having lied to Dhamon about who and what he is. But he just lets it all happen. He gets the actual sword, and apparently Wormsbane had a new power that led people to their true desires. Sometimes. Awfully convenient, but okay. It just never manifested before, apparently. It leads Dhamon to the most precious object in the chieftain's hoard, and he ends up giving it to Maldred. So, Maldred is working with the chieftain to collect the enslaved ogres from the mines with Fiona. They're pretending to help her get her brother, but they really have no intention of doing so. Dhamon leaves them all and finds Ricali in a healer's hut. He pays for her and the healer and leaves until the sword tells him that the secret to getting rid of the scale embedded on his leg is in the swamp. So he returns and rejoins the party. They all end up leaving, abandoning Ricali, who is no longer an important part of the story, and they just head into the swamp. They battle sorcery and beasts, losing many of the party, and Fiona waxes and wanes on being with the group and whether her brother's alive or not, and whether that matters or not. She's easily swayed by Maldred, even after Rig tells her that they're going in the wrong direction. And it's because he has a charm spell on her. They all admit to not going to save her brother, but to instead save enslaved ogres, and Fiona is just on board with it. They enter the mines and fight their way, saving all sorts of races of people from the dragon spawn of Sable. Fiona may have even killed the draconian she was supposed to have a contact about her brother, but can't tell due to the charm Maldred cast on her sort of messing with her mind. Then the girl from the vision appears and beats everyone down. The narrative is so wild and crazy as to be unbelievable that anyone would go along with anything. The group should not be sticking together at all, and yet we still have pages to go, so they do stick together. The young girl who is apparently a powerful sorceress for Sable and reveals that Maldred is the ogre mage that he is, and drumroll, no one cares! Dhamon accepts immediately, and apparently even after Fiona is freed from her charm, seems not to strike out at him. Rig refuses to follow them, rather plans on going after the girl, as is Dhamon, and the story just ends as abruptly as you can imagine. Now look, I think the story is interesting, but it isn't earned. There's no believable justification for Dhamon's 180-degree turning character. There's no reason why any of them would be working together, as they are all antagonistic to each other. It's like a mean girl adventure party at a home game. I just don't get it. While I read the rest of the trilogy, while I will read the rest of the trilogy just to unravel the story, hoping that it ends up making more sense, I am not hopeful that it will. And look, I think Jean Rabe was best at short stories. As she extends a story to novel length or trilogy length, the story itself begins to unravel, and it unravels exponentially fast. If you are really invested in this era of Dragonlance, there is no real reason to read this novel. If you're really invested in Dhamon as a character, there's no reason to read this novel, as it isn't the character that you know and love. So unless you're just a Dragonlance masochistic completionist like me, I would suggest skipping this altogether. But that's just my opinion. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. You just finished reading it today for the first time. Me too. Gene Black creates good, complicated characters, but you prefer short stories, as there were times this one dragged on a bit for you. 100%. Made you think it would be a really fun campaign to find a group of thieves, or maybe two sets of campaigns of different aligned groups that don't realize they're in the same campaign until the end. Yeah, and it does feel like it's just a bunch of people that don't like each other that are going along simply because they're in the same home game, you know? It makes no sense to me. As a big fan of nostalgia, you really enjoyed the use of Wormslayer and references to Tanis' sword. I did too, except that it manifested powers that were never presented before now. And that I thought was very strange. Not Wormslayer, but Wormsbane. Noah, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. The scene where Tanis receives it's Wormsbane from Kith Cannon was your favorite moment in fantasy when you were a boy? Yeah, it's such a great story beat. You liked that Maldred was the Irda. He wasn't an Irda. He was an ogre. He was an ogre mage, is literally what they called him. They've been depicting as good in many DL stories, but the Irda were originally created by Takesis, so you like the fact. Yeah, I don't know where you got the Irda connection, because at least in the book I read, it literally said ogre magi, is what he was. They said he was blue, but some of the ogre magi in old school D&D were blue. So I didn't connect it to Irda at all. And the fact that he was the son of the ogre that ran, there's the chieftain that ran Blood, also tells you he's an ogre. Not an Irda ogre, but a traditional ogre. And he had here's just another, I'm not trying to blow apart your theory there, but he also had boils, and he was ugly and disgusting, and he wasn't the beautiful Irda that we knew, of Irda. And so that's where, that's why I didn't have the Irda connection at all. So Fetch was a fun character, made you think that kobolds are fun, alter ego race to Kender. I loved Fetch as a character because he was tortured. He was named Fetch because people just told him to go get things. And so they just ended up calling him Fetch. And as he was dying, he was trying to instill, call me by my name. I have a name. I have an identity. Please recognize who I am as I'm actively dying after having helped you. Because the only reason why he died is because he was doing at his own peril what other people wanted him to do for their own selfish reasons. Either to find out what Maldred and Fiona were doing together and where they were, or to find out who was causing the rain and where they were, or to find out where Fiona's brother was, and like all this stuff was slowly killing him, but he did it because that's just what he did as a character. And it's sort of devastatingly sad when you think of it like that, because if you live your life to serve other people, you never actually get the respect, because you're never demanding that you are an individual. You are literally a tool for someone else to use rather than an individual with value, whole and unto yourself. And that bothers me. I think, everyone needs to be able to stand up for themselves and demand respect for who and what they are. And you can't do that if you're constantly trying to please other people, or you're constantly being the tool of someone else. That means you are throwing your identity away, and that is just pathetic. It's just, there's no excuse for it. So it's devastatingly sad meeting characters like that for me. Maybe Wormsbane power to take the wielder to their true desires, why Tanis stayed to the Dragon High Lord Kitty R for 3 days. Knocking boots. Yeah, maybe. So anyway, look, Dhamon is just a piece of trash in this novel. I remember reading Dawning of New Age, and I read it a number of times, and enjoying him as a character. And so when I finally got to the point where I was going to read this trilogy, I wasn't really looking forward to it, but I was like, all right, well, I know Dhamon. He used to be an Knight of Takhisis, and he came around the side of good. He is a hero. He believes in honor. And that is not this character at all. So you really have to get over the hurdle of, this is not who you think it is. There's no good reason for why he is the way he is. Just accept it. And then get over the hurdle of, there's no reason why any of these characters are staying together. Just accept that they're staying together. And there's no real reason why anyone's doing anything except that Dhamon wants them to do it. Hence, everyone does things. So he has this power over everyone else that is unearned, unjustified, and illogical. And that's this story. It's frustrating because I did find myself enjoying aspects of it, but as a narrative, it completely breaks down from like page 4 and is very, very frustrating, because this is par for the course for Jean Rabe's writing. If you read Dawning of a New Age trilogy, it went crazy places. It hopped around between books and just around time. And then when it stopped, it was just done. It was like they were in the middle of something and then it just ended. And you're just like, oh, well, I guess that's it then. That's exactly how this book ended. Huge inciting incident until literally the last page. And then it's ended. There's no more words. You're flipping through the back pages going, what the heck? What? So hopefully there's not a huge time jump and location jump in the next book, but who knows? You think she leaned into alcoholism because maybe after abandoning his troops, maybe it would have been more believable. Yeah, I don't know. It would have to be a number of incidents that all added up to the 180 degrees. You go through one horrible moment and that scars you, but you need a lot of scars to be as wounded as this character is. And I just can't. It took Karaman Majir a lifetime of pain and torment by his brother and abandonment by his brother to finally become the abusive alcoholic that he ended up being. It took Rig one encounter to become the piece of shit that he became. And you're just like, wait, it's not earned. Like, you need to earn choices in stories. Otherwise, the story falls apart immediately. And it sucks because it's the setup of it is interesting. And you're like, ooh, why did he turn out this way? This seems like a very interesting character choice. I love it when characters evolve and change, but there was no evolution. There was just change. So, in any case, that is it for my review of Downfall by Jean Rabe. What did you think of Dhamon's character being so different? Do you believe the party would stay together after so much deceit? And finally, are you looking forward to the next novel in the trilogy? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. Thank you to creator patrons Aaron Hardy and D. Robert Handy, producer patron David Galindo, developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz, and all of the YouTube members. I would also like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. This channel was all about celebrating the wonderful world of DragonLance Saga, and I hope you join that celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with DragonLance Saga, and until next time, Sláinte mhath.